So tomorrow is still set for yet another group of learners to join the phased reopening of schools. It's still unclear at this hour if Minister Angie Motshekga's meeting with Cabinet today will have any bearing on that reopening. Let's get some insight now on the story with SABC News reporter Mahlako Komane. So Mahlako, what do we know about that Cabinet meeting and its outcome?
Yes, good evening indeed, Tipi. So in terms of what exactly took place at the Cabinet meeting, we're still yet to hear. We obviously would need the department or the ministry in itself to issue a statement and tell us what is it that has happened there. But obviously, you know, there is a chain of command in how things should happen in terms of reporting, and finally we will be able to understand what is it that happened. But we do know that Minister Motshekga had always said that the final decision does rest with Cabinet in terms of the closure or this demand that schools be closed going forward.
And I want to talk about that, the call for schools to shut down until the end of August and the possible return of matriculants 17th of August. Just expand a little bit more about that call and the quarters from which it comes.
Yes, in terms of the closure of schools, and we've heard that the unions came out with that, but also I think COSAS also was one of the organizations that had said that let schools be closed. But I think the call that COSAS had initially made was the entire grades. They wanted all the grades to be closed and just matriculants to continue with the curriculum, and that they continue at camps. But then when the unions came out last week and said, and they had said that, they've gotten the latest information that was given by the World Health Organization that had said, that where infections are not controllable, that schools, it's not advisable that schools should be opened there. And also there was also that issue, I think it was SATU that came out saying that in light of the information that this virus is airborne, it becomes very problematic within schools, considering that it's winter, to ventilate in terms of, there are no air conditions in South African schools. Some of them barely had water. So things like air conditions are obviously a luxury, saying that let schools, close up until the period of the peak is over. In terms of date, I think perhaps towards the springtime, specific dates weren't necessarily given there, but in terms of the trajectory of the numbers, when you look at them, saying that it was quite concerning, and the number of infections that were happening. And I think another issue that was also advanced was the mental health of educators. And also, I think also, if you also look at the infections, they were also saying that in terms, when you do look at the infections, in terms of the opening, the closing of schools, because we know once there's a case at a school, they have to close, they have to go and sanitize and then reopen again, saying that not a lot of, it was not conducive to learning, that I think the code saying that schools are now resembling health centers. So those were just some of the reasons, I think, in terms of the closure of schools. But also, when we did try and speak to some parents, there was also a little bit of a division, some parents feeling that we can't be in hiding forever in terms of sending children back to school. But also there is obviously that call that some parents rely on schools to serve as a form of childcare, if you may call it that it is where they feel children are the safest. And the Human Rights Commission also added their, they added their
Mahlako, before we run out of time, we know that more grades are going back to school tomorrow. So what do we know at this stage? How many learners are expected? And we know that it's grades 12, 7, 11, 6 and grade R's. But the minister had said before that about 38% of learners had not taken up the reopening of schools. So is it expected that there is going to be a deluge of learners going back to school?
It would seem not. If you look at just the statistics that came out of Gauteng, that some parents are opting to keep their children at home. 30% of Gauteng matriculants, they are unaccounted for in terms of them coming back to school. Grade R's even worse at the 70%. But I think it was KZN that came out and said that there wouldn't be any further phasing in of grades in the month of July, that the directive will have to come from the HOD in the province there in terms of, the phasing in. So in KZN, I don't think there will be a return of grades. I think it's grade 3s that are expected in other provinces. In Gauteng, I think we're welcoming back grade 3s tomorrow. But it remains to be seen if indeed parents will take this up, because at that particular age, parents are the ones that make the decision. So the question then does become, does the department nationally in terms of education have the buy-in of the parents, which are also major stakeholders in this particular instance?
Thanks a lot for that, SABC News reporter Mahlako Komane. So the country waits the outcome of that meeting between the Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga and Cabinet. And we know that there are growing calls for schools to shut down as the country faces its peak of COVID-19.